Welcome to Sewanee Study Abroad 101. My name is Scott Wilson. I'm the Associate Dean for Global Education at Sewanee. Today I'd like to do three things with you. First of all, I'd like to familiarize you with the study abroad application process at Sewanee. Secondly, I'd like to introduce to you some of the basic program types that we are affiliated with and a little bit of information about particular programs. And third, I want to help you to begin the process of thinking about whether or not study abroad is a good option for you and your child, and what types of programs you might wish to consider. Let's begin by thinking about some of the ways in which you can find the correct program or the right program for you and your child. First of all, Sewanee's Office of Global Education has a website with all of the pre-approved programs listed on it. This means that if a student goes on one of those programs, the process for transferring credits and for handling tuition payments is much simpler than going on another program. So for example, if a student wishes to go to a program not on our list, and there may be reasons to do so, then that student will have to apply to the Standards Committee for special permission to go on that program, which is an additional step that a student would have to take. Sewanee's Office of Global Education has taken care to evaluate various programs and has come up with a very expansive list of almost 400 programs from which students are able to select. This allows us to have direct billing agreements with those institutions, and the transfer of credit is quite simple. In general, there are four basic types of programs. Some are group-centered, some are more investigative in their orientation, some are focused upon service learning, and others involve direct enrollment. I'll explain each of these in turn. Sewanee has a number of programs that it directly operates that fall under the rubric of group-centered programs. The group-centered model is one in which students from the same college tend to travel together, take their courses together, live together, and engage in excursions together. The European Studies model, which we run with our partner institute, Rhodes College, starts in either Rhodes or Sewanee, where students will take classes together for 2 weeks before heading to Great Britain, where again they take classes for another month. After that point, the group splits into two subgroups. One goes to Greece and typically Turkey, although not during this current semester for geopolitical reasons, where they study classical European civilization. The other group goes to France, Germany, and Belgium on a medieval modern track of European studies. A second program is Sewanee in Spain. And again, students from Sewanee go with a Sewanee faculty member to Madrid, where they take a number of courses together. Some of those are taught by the Sewanee faculty member, while others are offered by members of the faculties at the University of Madrid. The third program is Sewanee in Paris. This is a program where Sewanee students go with a Sewanee faculty member to Paris. They take some of their courses with that faculty member. They take other courses in French language and French culture and European culture at various institutions in Paris with which the program is affiliated. One final difference between the Sewanee in Paris and other programs on this list is that in the Sewanee in Paris program, students will live with families in the Parisian area. So there's the opportunity for homestays, which deepens the immersion in French culture and Parisian culture in particular. Finally, the Ghana program is one that's offered by Calvin College in Michigan. We have a faculty member who has taught on this program before when she was a member of Calvin College, and she will be helping to lead this program in the spring of 2017. The Ghana program offers opportunities for community engagement and service learning, so there's a good opportunity for hands-on learning in an African context, in addition to taking courses in language study as well as other kinds of area studies courses. In addition to these semester-long programs, there are a number of short-term programs during the summer with which Sewanee is affiliated or that it operates directly, all of which follow this group-centered model. A second kind of model is an investigative program. SIT, or the School for International Training, is a classic example of this investigative approach. In the SIT model, students typically will take only 3 or 4 classes together, and there's a set menu of those courses. One will typically be in the language in which the students are studying. Another will be a course on the particular issue that SIT is looking at that site, for example, conservation biology. And then a third class would be investigative or research methods for that subject matter. The fourth course then is an independent research project that the student takes on with the help of one or more faculty members at that site. The SIT model of investigation provides great opportunities to learn field methods, to focus on a particular subject matter, and to have an intensive, immersive experience in that particular locale. A third model of study abroad is service learning. In fact, many of the study abroad programs have begun to incorporate service learning into their programs. So some of the providers that we are affiliated with, such as IES, will have service learning opportunities at their particular centers where students might enroll. IPSL, or International Programs for Service Learning, though, is a model of one kind of program that focuses almost exclusively on service learning. The IPSL programs with which we are affiliated typically will have a language course that students will be required to take, and then they'll have a number of courses that are reflective or help students to understand this service learning opportunity. In addition to that, they will have a course that is focused solely on the service learning experience, and they will write reports based upon that service learning. There are a number of benefits to this kind of approach to learning while studying abroad. One is that it deepens the understanding of local cultures as well as the kinds of challenges that many cultures around the world face. It also offers the opportunity for students to make a contribution to some aspect of social justice in that area and to address needs that various cultures may face. A final model of study abroad is direct enrollment. We have a number of providers, IES, CIEE, IFSA, Butler, DIS, and Arcadia, with which we are affiliated, that have a number of direct enrollment possibilities. Under this kind of model, students would apply directly to one of these providers, for example, the IES Buenos Aires program. And once they apply to that, they will be offered the opportunity to directly enroll in classes at the institutions with which that program is affiliated. So students would take courses, say in psychology or environmental studies, in economics, business, and the like, alongside other students from that particular institution. This allows them to have an immersive experience in campus life in that culture and to learn directly from students with the contact that they would have in the classroom. When thinking about these various kinds of study abroad opportunities, I think there are a number of questions that any family should consider. First of all, I think the family should sit down and the student should think through what are the study abroad goals that the student has for this experience. For example, are they really trying to advance their language expertise, in which case they would want an immersive language program? Are they trying to learn field methods? Are they trying to make a contribution in terms of service learning? Or do they want to have other kinds of experiences? A second question that they should think about are what kinds of programs and coursework at those programs will help the student to advance their course of study at Sewanee. So for example, if a psychology major chooses to go on a program that has no relationship to psychology, then it may not make a lot of sense to the people who are approving the study abroad. So picking programs that offer the opportunity to enhance Sewanee's coursework or to deepen one's understanding of Sewanee coursework through direct research makes the most out of the study abroad opportunity. A third thing to think about, which I'll talk about more in detail in just a moment, is what kinds of programs fit my personal limitations and might provide a reasonable challenge to me. I think every student and every family finds themselves on a kind of spectrum of how much challenge they want and how much help they need while on study abroad. In particular, study abroad can be very challenging both physically and mentally. So students who have either disabilities or mental challenges may find that they need to consider whether or not study abroad is appropriate for them or what types of programs might be most appropriate for them. Finally, students and their parents should think about what kinds of geographic locations fit their particular interests and language abilities. So geographic considerations is a final thing to take into account. Let me say a little bit more about mental and physical health considerations. As I've just mentioned, study abroad is physically demanding and mentally challenging. A number of students have come back from their time abroad and have noted that it was much more challenging than they expected it to be. So I think when thinking about the study abroad opportunity, parents and students should think very seriously about what are the limitations that they face and how much exposure they can withstand through a study abroad opportunity. So at minimum, I think they should have a conversation with counselors if they have mental health challenges. They should stock up on medication before they go because that might not be available to them once they go abroad. And more generally, I think they should just have a conversation that's frank about whether or not this is the right opportunity for them. Based upon those kinds of reflections and conversations with family members and with friends and counselors, they should pick an appropriate program if they decide that this is in fact something that they want to pursue. Finally, I think anyone with special mental or physical needs must take into account that the United States is unique from other countries in terms of the kind of accommodations that might be expected once they go on a study abroad program. So countries' regulations differ in terms of the accommodations that will be provided, and in some cases mental health laws may be different so that someone who faces depression and is seen as suicidal may be institutionalized for a period of time. So it's important to do one's due diligence before going on a study abroad program, and I encourage families to take these things into account and have frank, earnest conversations in this regard. At this point, I want to turn a little bit towards the application process internally. First of all, I would just say that all of the programs that I've been speaking about thus far, and almost every program on our pre-approved list, involves a direct application to those programs. At this point, all of those applications are online, so a student can explore those opportunities, and then if they find a program that they like on our pre-approved list, can begin the application process to those programs directly through the portals that those providers have. Internally, there are a number of steps that must be taken. The first of which is to sign a study abroad agreement, which is laying out the basic policies that Sewanee has on study abroad, including the financing of study abroad, the agreement to have your social violations and honor code violations screened to make sure that we are sending appropriate ambassadors abroad. At the information sessions, we hand out this study abroad agreement and ask students to either sign it then or to share it with their parents and then sign it and return it before the third week of September. The second major deadline is the portability of financial aid, and that is on October 4th. That is extremely important for any student who receives any type of financial aid, whether it be merit aid, a tuition exchange through some sort of organization, or financial need-based aid. A third deadline is November 7th, when we have a course pre-approval form due, and this is very important for the transfer of credits, especially for majors and minors. The fourth major deadline is December 5th, and this is when leave of absence for study abroad forms are due. That is available online at our website, and then also a liability waiver form, which holds us harmless if something happens while the student is on a study abroad program. It's very important that the students keep on top of these deadlines and to submit these forms in a timely fashion. I'll briefly say just a little bit about the screening process. In order for a student to qualify for going on a study abroad program, they have to be in good academic standing and social standing. So we make sure that the student's GPA is sufficient to go abroad, that they have received enough credits so that they are in good academic standing. In addition to that, we ask the students to initial a waiver on the study abroad agreement that allows us to look at their social standing. So again, we look at social violations that may have occurred and the honor code violations that may have occurred as well. I'll briefly describe how we go through this process. There's a database that Sewanee keeps on any kinds of social infractions, and then we also ask for information about any potential honor code violations that have occurred for a particular student. When we do this, we are not looking for a single instance that will bar a student necessarily from going abroad. Typically, we're looking for patterns. So if a student in their first semester at Sewanee had a social violation where they were caught drinking underage, that in and of itself will not bar the student from being permitted to go abroad. Instead, if we find 2 or 3 violations every year and a persistence and severity of certain violations, then we would not recommend that that student be allowed to go study abroad, because that's not the kind of student we want to have representing us while we send them abroad. So the nature and the frequency of the violations is what is most of concern to us. And we consider those kinds of social violations alongside potential honor code violations. So all of this creates a kind of composite picture of the student who is applying for study abroad. And in most cases, students are cleared to go without any kinds of questions at all. Let me now then turn to the financing of student study abroad. And I think there are 2 sides to take into account. One is the payment system or the fee system that Sewanee charges, and then the provision of financial aid for those who qualify. So for all study abroad programs, Sewanee charges the comprehensive fees, which include tuition, room, board, and other kinds of fees. Sewanee will bill the parents or the family directly for that, and then will collect that from the families. Sewanee then pays the standard tuition, room, and board that is charged by the study abroad providers directly to that program on behalf of the students. This model allows families to have monthly payment systems used so that they can continue with those monthly payments during the time of the study abroad experience, and without worrying about having to pay everything up front. There are a couple of caveats to the way in which we will handle the payment and collection system. In some cases, the study abroad provider will not have a full meal plan. And in those cases, for example, if they provided breakfast and dinner but not lunch, we would refund 1/3 of the board that was charged to the family when Sewanee collected its comprehensive tuition, room, board, and fees. In some cases, a study abroad provider will not provide housing. In those cases, we would refund the full board, the full room expense to the families, so they'd have that money free to give to the student for that cost. There are also some providers that allow for apartment style living or singles rather than a standard double. Sewanee will pay for the standard room allotment, but if a student chooses to have a higher level of room situation, such as an apartment or a single, at an additional expense, the families will be responsible for covering that expense. Most of the study abroad programs that we have approved are fairly comparable to the tuition, room, board, and fee charges that Sewanee charges. The additional costs that are sometimes associated with Sewanee's tuition, room, and board help us to cover the cost of running the study abroad office, help to cover the cost of handling transcripts from abroad, the collection of student accounts, and other kinds of added benefits that aren't covered by the study abroad program providers. At this point, I'll turn to the other side of the financial equation, which is the portability of financial aid. Any student who receives need or merit-based aid, and that includes any kind of exchange of tuition program, may apply for portability of their aid. This does not include the work-study component, so it would automatically be reduced for students who have work-study built into their financial aid package. I should also note that the portability of financial aid process currently is a competitive one, so that students are not guaranteed portability of financial aid. The way in which this process works is that students will submit an application for portability of financial aid, and it includes a narrative statement as to why they want to study in this particular country or this particular program and how it will benefit their course of study at Sewanee. In addition to that, so that's 4 points of their scoring of their application. Another 4 points are based upon their GPA. The students also request a faculty member to submit a letter of recommendation on their behalf, and that receives 2 points in the scoring system. So there's a total of 10 points available, and based upon the scores of the students' submissions, the standards committee will determine the rank of the students, and then they go through and they give out financial aid to cover the allocated financial aid for that student until the amount allocated is used up. So if the first student has $15,000 of need and there are $450,000 allocated, then they take $15,000 of the pot, and then we go down the list until that $450,000 is used up. This is an example of the portability of financial aid form. Again, it is linked to our website, and students can file this directly online. As I mentioned, it has this 10-point scale on which all applications are judged, 4 points for GPA, 4 points for the student request letter, and 2 points for the faculty endorsement. The second form that I wanted to speak about is one that's related to the transfer of credit from the study abroad program to Sewanee. Before leaving for study abroad, every student must fill out this form and submit it to the registrar's office. We ask that the students complete this form by designating which courses in the study abroad program they wish to take. And it's wise to list more than just 4 courses, because sometimes courses will not actually be offered, or they will be filled by the time the students arrive at the program site. If the student wishes to transfer any of the courses back for credit in their major or minor courses of study, they need to have the signature of the chairs of those departments or programs. When this form is submitted to the registrar's office, they will review it to make sure that the courses are acceptable for transfer of credit. So for example, if a student picks a course that is unrelated to any of the departments on campus, it might be designated as inappropriate for transfer back to Sewanee, in which case the Sewanee student would be told not to take that course. The final documents that have to be submitted to the Office of Global Education are the leave of absence form and the liability waiver form. These can be filled out online through the Office of Global Education webpage, and they serve as the final basis for the leave of absence letter that our office files on behalf of the student. That authorizes the student to participate in the study abroad program and details the outstanding general education requirements and the obligations of the student once they return and while they are on the study abroad program. The liability waiver form simply clarifies that we will be held harmless while the student is on the study abroad program. While abroad, the student will be responsible for maintaining good conduct, and they will be held to at least 2 codes and often 3 codes. First of all, the Sewanee Honor Code and Social Code continues to apply when the students are on a study abroad program. When students participate in a Sewanee Run program, that's a relatively straightforward way of managing the Honor and Social Code. But if a student participates in a third-party program, such as CIEE or IES, then they will be held accountable for the Sewanee Honor Code once they return from their study abroad experience. Most of the program providers with which we are affiliated often have their own honor and social codes. So they will require the students to sign a letter of agreement that they will follow the honor and social codes of that particular program. In extreme cases, a student might be sent home if they are found to violate the social and honor code of those particular programs. And we have no tolerance for sexual harassment and other kinds of inappropriate sexual contact, so that would be a basis for sending a student home. Finally, students are also subjected to the laws in the societies that they are visiting. So when local laws differ from U.S. laws, students are responsible for being aware of those legal differences and abiding by the local laws. All of us at Sewanee, and likely you and your children, are concerned with safety and risk management while the students are abroad. Most of our program providers have well-developed and well-conceived risk management tools. They have developed communication protocols so that the program leaders communicate readily with their students. They communicate with Sewanee and their families. And some of these programs, in fact, will require students to carry cell phones at all times so that they can have direct contact with the students while they are abroad. In addition to that, Sewanee is developing its own risk management tools, one of which is a LiveSafe app that has been sent to all of the students before they go abroad. And in fact, all the students at Sewanee have access to this LiveSafe app. Some of the features of this are that it will have protocols on how to handle different crisis situations, including terrorist events, an unwanted sexual encounter, criminal behavior, and things of this sort. And so students can open this application on their cell phone or other Android device and look up the protocol for how to handle an emergency situation or a risky situation. In addition to that, the application has a GPS-based sensor that allows students to know if they are near a risky or unsafe event. So for example, if there's a terrorist event in, say, Paris, a student in Paris could look on this map to identify where that is, and the application will create a zone around the event and will suggest that the student not enter into that zone. So we're doing as much as we can from abroad to facilitate safer study abroad opportunities for our students. We're also working on other kinds of communication tools and applications such as WhatsApp and WeChat that will allow us to develop group-based communication with the students while they're abroad. Finally, the Office of Global Education is somewhat limited in the communications with parents or others about the safety and the activities of their students while they're abroad. FERPA, which is a federal law, is what restricts us in this regard. But FERPA allows, in an emergency situation, greater communication with parents and we will communicate as much and as frequently as possible. In addition to that, on the on the study abroad agreement form, we ask the students to fill out emergency contact information for who we should contact under what kinds of circumstances. And that will help us to identify with whom we can communicate in this kind of situation. Finally, let me turn to some issues about why I think it's important to study abroad. First of all, this is an exciting opportunity to learn about another culture and another environment. So the opportunities of firsthand experience in a foreign land are wonderful. Related to that, study abroad offers a wonderful opportunity to advance one's academic career. It allows us to move from kind of theoretical or narrative forms of reading in the classroom to hands-on experiences that enliven our curriculum. So this is a wonderful kind of opportunity to enhance and deepen the academic experience at Sewanee. A third reason is that the study abroad experience offers a rare opportunity to grow personally in leaps and bounds. By separating oneself from one's friends and to a certain degree family and home culture, it allows for personal exploration in a deeper way than one can experience typically on one's own campus setting. So for reasons of developing personal growth, it's a wonderful opportunity. And finally, I think that this kind of opportunity to study abroad allows students to deepen their understanding of what it means to be a global citizen. And by that, I mean the kinds of opportunities to help others, as well as the responsibilities that one bears for what one does in the world. So to any extent that we can inculcate that kind of sense of responsibility as global citizens, we would like to try to advance that. So what are the next steps? In the sessions I've had with students about study abroad information, I always ask them to begin the process of talking with their parents, with their friends, and with their faculty members to learn how we can find ways for them to participate in a meaningful way in study abroad, and also to discuss whether or not study abroad is an appropriate form of study for them. A second thing that they need to pay attention to is to follow the deadlines. Especially in the spring semester, the deadlines for applying are pretty tight, and it doesn't provide much of a window for extending the application process. So students really need to be attentive to deadlines. Third, when they have begun to identify appropriate programs through conversations with their faculty advisors, with their families, and with this office, then they should begin the process of directly applying to those programs, typically through the online portals. And while it's a good idea sometimes to apply to more than one program in case that program fills or is canceled, it's also not advisable to apply to 5, 6, 7, or 8 programs. So focusing on just 2 or maybe 3 programs that seem to suit the student's interests and really would help to advance their academic career is a wise approach. I end with just letting students and you know that our office is open to communication, and if there are additional questions about the study abroad process, you should feel free to contact Sewanee System or myself. And I've listed our phone numbers and our email accounts. And I welcome any questions that you may have about this. Thank you for listening into this webinar.